I'm Dr. Kelly Brogan. You may know me as a New York Times bestselling author of a book with an exploding pill on the cover, renegade psychiatrist, pole dancer, or honorary member of the Disinformation Dozen. What can I say? I'm a born provocateur. I've spent most of my recent life exposing deceptions, connecting dots, and discovering the secret places my inner victim is still waiting to be liberated. And now I feel called to help you reclaim all of your parts, your health, your sexuality, your power, and your expression, so that you can finally truly own yourself. I want to ignite in you that inner knowing and the pulsing vitality that lives beneath your disempowerment, disconnection, and resentment, so that you can audaciously, courageously, and playfully alchemize your struggle into the specific pleasure of who you are. This is Reclamation Radio. Hi, and welcome back to Reclamation Radio. I am Dr. Kelly Brogan. And what I love about my containers is that the women I attract always have some audacious questions to ask me. So it's my intention for the musings that I share on these topics to grow the permission field of what's possible, and also to offer relatable reframes that can jailbreak you from your victim stories. So you might notice that I'm a bit more familiar and free when I'm answering these questions in our private spaces. So take a listen, and I hope you'll take the opportunity to submit your questions to me in my membership Vital Life Project. Today's question. I have 2 young adult children still living at home who are struggling to gain independence. Is it ever appropriate to say that I can no longer afford to completely support them financially? It's important to give up hope and just let it be okay that you did not know what you wish you had known at the time you wish you had known it. So, for me, that registers as like failure, right? So my inner masculine is like, fuck, I don't know. Now I'm going to be decimated by this failure, right? So I feel that I failed as a mother, and there's actually nothing wrong. My kids are amazing, but the feeling was a pre-existing feeling that my daughters have given me the opportunity in many ways through my narration of what's happening to meet. Okay. So I think it's important to just kind of get to that place where we're like, you know what? Whatever. Did what I did. And, I often invoke that Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. I sometimes wish there was another, stanza or whatever, another phrase to say when you're ready to do so. So the readiness is very mysterious, right? Like what makes us ready? Who really knows? We just are when we are and not a moment sooner. So your children are young adults, and they are in this likely emancipation window where they are working out how to individuate on this Jungian path to really disentangle from the parts of them that are you and to find the parts of them that are them. And there's going to be a lot of overlap. I mean, how many of us uncomfortably recognize that we are so much like the parents that we reject, and sometimes for the very reasons that we reject them? When you communicate, let it be without an agenda so that you can learn about the experience, right? If you have an agenda about your son getting a job and you're hiding that agenda, it's going to be felt. So when you say, oh, so did you submit the application? That's not really a question, right? It's in the logical fallacy territory. Like it's a loaded thing that you're offering. And it's because you have made it mean something that he's not employed at this point. And it scares you, I'm guessing, which is totally understandable. So that's why getting into your lane is going to be where your system relaxes. And it's going to be because you can't actually control his life, especially at this point, right? So when you get into your lane, you're going to assess what feels good to me. Is this working for me to financially support him? And the way you'll know the answer to that is if there are no strings attached. So when we give something and there's a covert expectation for appreciation or some kind of return on whatever it is that we're giving, that's called manipulation, right? So what if you fund his life, for the coming months, and he does absolutely nothing that you want him to do with that funding of his life? How will that work for you, right? And if that's fine, then it's actually a gift. It's actually an offering. But if there's an ask that is tucked into that offer, it's going to really help you and him to become aware of that, right? So if it's actually an exchange, that is totally fine, right? It's just bringing that to your awareness will allow you to communicate that, right? So if the exchange is, I don't know, you could make it up, whatever you want. In 6 months, I want you to be able to contribute this X amount, to your monthly expenses, or, at this point in the calendar year, I'm going to no longer be available to support you. Then it's something that he can consent to and say yes or no. So the strings attached to this offer in the form of what you need in exchange are exposed. So what is a flower essence? So many people are coming to understand plant medicine and holistic healing, but what I have for you is so potent and beautiful. I want you to really get it. My favorite brand, Lotus Way, has the best quiz for you to really understand the power of flowers, and which elixirs are most supportive for you personally. So actually, depending on which flower image you're attracted to, you will learn more about your own true essence and what may be latent or dormant in your self-expression and the kind of support that you need. So if you head to the link in show notes, it'll take you to this quiz, and then you can choose your most powerful elixir. Don't forget to use my code Kelly15 for 15% off. And in case you're curious, I'm a divine truth and luscious embodiment gal. Have fun. So the idea that you have the capacity to help him get his discipline in order, right? And to help him figure his life out is really tempting. And I totally get that. I would feel the exact same way, right? What can I do to help him? He's not following through on shit. This is not good. And I don't have sons. However, I have studied man-woman relating at a very deep level. And what I find is that as a mother, you are at a very, very important juncture, I'm guessing, age-wise, where what you can offer him that will pay the greatest dividends for the rest of his life is to see him for his masculine competence, even when it's not apparent. And when you see that in him and you trust him to figure things out, and that could mean withdrawing all funds tomorrow. Only you're going to know what feels right to you, right? But when you really trust him, then he is no longer serving mommy, right? Then he is in contact with his healthy aggression because he's going to figure it out. He's going to grow his esteem, and he is going to see the fruit of his effort in his lifescape. And sometimes that takes years and years and years. Sometimes it takes failures, right? And one of the ways that we can love and respect the men in our lives as women is to allow them to fail and not need to fix it for them. And I think it's a paradoxical way to show somebody, respect and love. And it also allows him to get in touch with what he wants, right? So I don't know the nature of your agreement, but it could just be that, he went from being a kid and now he's a bit older, and you're still funding the operation, right? You're still supporting him. I can see something very similar happen. I could see how that could unfold. It's never too late to come to a conscious agreement, right? So you could sit down tomorrow and say, listen, I know we've never really talked about this, but I am realizing that there may be some aspects of our financial arrangement or our situation that aren't feeling good for me. And so, I love you. I'm here for you. I want to support you. And I want to know exactly what it is that you want, from me. And I'm going to see how that feels for me. And here's what it is that I want, from you, if anything. And you could see how that feels. And that's called a conscious agreement, right? You're assessing the compatibility of your needs so you come to a win-win. And I think the hard emotional work for you as a mother may simply be at some point that feels okay to you, allowing him to step into his process as an independent man whose life is not fixed by his mom, right? So he starts to self-consult for approval so that he is not, it's called, I mentioned it on day one, it's called the castration effect. So he is not in service of his mom to his own detriment, which will play out in his romantic relationships and in his lifescape. And I imagine that is really difficult. And I also mentioned that I'm sure I would have failed in that regard had I a son. And the dynamics are different. So people love to ask me questions, and I love to ask questions of others because inquiry is play. But some of my interviews and answers are too hot to handle for Reclamation Radio. So in my membership Vital Life project, I have created a private podcast that gets delivered to wherever you listen to podcasts, where I answer your questions that arise because of my provocative subject matter. And I also share interviews that might otherwise be censored that I call the Sovereignty Series. So you'll get access to these private podcasts and a private chat by joining my membership Vital Life project. I'll see you in there.